But now we get to have fun with Manjaro. That's the new suffering challenge. For this Manjaro challenge, or at least this challenge, my wife had a say in it this time, and unfortunate for me, this has resulted in some pretty laughable. It says I'm getting desktop audio and a mic. You got mic here. We'll do with that. So, this is my setup. My wife told me she wanted to see an Arch operating system, particularly one I hate the most, which is Arch and Manjaro. Manjaro more so than Arch. Oh my gosh. Like, Manjaro bad. And I want to continue this. I didn't want this to turn into a hate rant, but this has been a few days. This is Wednesday. I started the challenge on Sunday. Let's just say the first night was a total disaster. And this has come a real long way. Now, I'm not going to pretend to try and explain everything that's going on to you. The gist of it is, this is a window manager. This is not a traditional system. So if I open Nemo here, you can see the windows tile each other. And if I so want to, I could grab this window and say, put that over here. And, you know, I could grab this window and put it down here and do it this way and this sort of thing. A window manager is a component of a desktop environment. I do like some of the ZSH customization going on here, though I have to admit I probably wouldn't run ZSH. I'm more familiar with Bash. Just a different front end in your terminal and whatnot. But I do like some of the autocomplete going on here. So this is actually day 3. Now, I'm going to just call this my first week's impressions, because I thought last time I spent too much time on certain topics and whatnot. I'm not going to get into this super hard. The first few days here have been awful. So my first impressions are coming to you several days late. And as a result, I'm not really thrilled with this system. As you'll note, this says Sway right here on the window manager, and you might be thinking, Joe, didn't you say this was going to be Hyprland and the TKG kernel? And yes, I know. I've already failed TKG kernel. I've already talked to Jacob about it. Jake being the kernel zealot in the Discord server. I have no idea why it fails. It just fails. So maybe I'll look into it more later. Maybe I just don't bother for this time. I do want to install his kernel. I think it'll be fun. But for things like Manjaro itself, boy has this been a ride. I used this. So I originally downloaded the XFCE version of Manjaro, and I'm hoping to overlay here some of the footage and stuff of things installing and whatnot. But so I started installing Manjaro XFCE. I was told by a member of the Discord, hey, you ought to sit here and build out, close this out here. You ought to sit here and build out a system on Xorg first, like an XFCE, and turn around afterwards and try to install Hyprland, because it's going to cause a bunch of issues that'll break any other Wayland-based desktop environments. Wayland being the display manager. In Linux right now you've got a fracture, and I'll leave it at that, of 2 different display technologies. One has been coming for a decade now. The other has been here since the 80s. In fact, it's probably older than that, but I digress. Xorg is the old way of doing things. Wayland is the new way of doing things. Wayland hasn't reached a point where it has replaced Xorg. So take that for what you will. As a result of this, I ended up with a broken system, trying to get in and do things. You know, I will freely admit, I installed the XFCE official version. I then turned around, attempted to install Hyprland, got Hyprland installed with a lot of broken packages, and from there things just went sideways. I tried to configure Hyprland. At some point I wiped my system out. I started with the Sway edition of Manjaro, which is apparently broken out of the box. I've got a lot of hate towards Manjaro right now. Suffice to say, the TLDR, do not use Manjaro. I'm just going to come out and say, if I do make it through this 30 days, that's going to be my verdict. Spoiler alert. But I think it's more important to see why, and those are the things are why I'm going to come back in the next video, and I really want to line this out for you. It's not that the idea behind Manjaro is bad. The idea behind Manjaro is the same idea that Ubuntu has with to Debian. Debian is the older grandfather that is then Ubuntu forks off of. The difference is the relationship's in a bit of reverse. So if I actually just go open D menu here, we'll go to Firefox because it's available. I'm gonna let that load up. Firefox, screw off, no one cares. So let's go ahead here. So yes, Manjaro is based on Arch, but it is not an Arch system. And I'm hoping that they have a graphic in here to kind of show what I'm talking about. And it looks like they do not. So, Manjaro Wiki. I wanted the Wikipedia, because a lot of these will show a visual representation, but basically, yeah, okay, they're not going to. Basically, Manjaro is a older rolling release of Arch. They do make some changes. I don't know exactly what those changes are, but they do make a lot of changes, and as a result, it is not identical to Arch, and so it's almost its own thing. The issue is Manjaro likes to ship a lot of packages that are broken, inherently broken, or aren't ready yet. There were a lot of controversies I'll get into in the next episode of this saga that make me really dislike the people behind it. But the key thing here is kind of boils down to they're rolling an Arch-like system several weeks behind for testing purposes. Here's my problem with this. Arch, the main reason to run Arch, as I've been told, and I've experimented with, is the AUR. The AUR is the be-all, end-all. It's the Arch user repository. We'll get into the details of it next time. But essentially, imagine like a giant community repository of packages that are built by the community for things you might want. As an example, DaVinci Resolve is not available directly for Arch. It's only on a RHEL-based system that you can actually install it, and even then, it's very finicky. The AUR has a package for that. It's already compiled and whatnot, and really the only thing they check in the AUR is does it compile. So there's that. And in most cases, Arch is only checking to make sure packages finish building. They don't necessarily always test, or at all test, functionality afterwards. The hilarious bit, what do you think happens when your Manjaro that's several weeks out of date is trying to access the AUR? Because you can access the AUR. If I go in here, go to a desktop 06 now, and go to POMAC, and go into Preferences, and put in my super secret password, I have Enable AUR support. In fact, I've been using the AUR for a lot of things, not necessarily through PAMAC. And there's a reason for this. PAMAC causes a lot of issues based upon package kit. I'll get into it another time. Package kit has problems, causes a lot of problems. As much as I like GUI options, if you're going to go terminal, you're going to go Arch, you should probably use the terminal for a lot of things. Or the Discover software store, which I would probably use on this system over PAMAC. I would probably rip out PAMAC if I was going to use this for any longer amount of time. I might even do it by the time you see it next. But number 2, the AUR assumes you're on Arch, called Arch User Repository, not Manjaro User Repository. So they're assuming you're running the latest packages. Well, you're not. You're running an outdated version of Arch, essentially, plus the seasoning that Manjaro adds to everything. Here's your second issue. Pacman, for whatever godforsaken reason, and I'm going to hate on Pacman for a moment here, will allow partial upgrades of the system. This means you can have packages and the system not agree with each other. And in fact, it will upgrade these packages on an uneven playing field to the point where it will break your system. It will physically break your system. You're just told basically to get good in most cases, or don't partial upgrade your system. The AUR and Pacman don't get along, so there's always an AUR helper, like Yay. That's the only one I've ever used. I know there's Paru and a few others. And from what I understand, these systems don't have the chops to prevent this partial upgrade problem. So most package managers will stop you at some point and say, hey bro, I can't do this. This is going to be a problem. Well, guess what? Pacman doesn't do that. Yay doesn't do that. Paru doesn't do that. So you're just going to screw your system up. Now, in an Arch system, it's not a problem. You're going to constantly be updating your system anyway. In fact, when you do run an AUR helper, it forces a Pacman SYU, essentially, and upgrades the whole system. But there's a lot of instances where AUR packages don't get updated, or they do get updated, and that's the problem. They require newer files than what you have, and you're going to break your system. With Manjaro, it is almost the kiss of death to use the AUR in any capacity, and I'm using it a lot right now, so I'm trying to break the system. In fact, I fixed it the other day by borderline illegally running Yay and Pacman SYU 14 times over, which running it multiple times over shouldn't do anything. Eventually the system figured out whatever package it was hung up on with sway lock, and now my system works. And in fact, what really fixed my system is installing i3. So it's like the base build of Sway that they built for Manjaro is missing critical system packages and doesn't work properly. It's Manjaro in a nutshell for you. Even if you just go in here, you pull up their webpage, right? Say, I want to get Manjaro. I'm a masochist. You're immediately hit with what's your architecture. I want to preface this, Manjaro is not for the noob user. For a while, it was literally thrown at people as Arch for noobs. It is 100% not for... Arch is not for noobs. I don't care what y'all have to say about it. Arch is not for noobs. Get that into your head. Number 2, okay, so maybe you know, I know, x86, that's like every laptop ever, but you may have some ARM builds. I wouldn't use Manjaro ARM. There's a lot of reasons why. Like I said, I want to compile a list of reasons why not to use Manjaro. But you can see, I got the Sway version over here. I didn't try the Mate version. I want to try the Mate desktop environment on something else that I might not hate myself for. Maybe we'll get into it with Slackware. We'll see. Or some of the other systems. I might even do an Ubuntu Budgie or another Mate or Budgie based environment eventually anyway, so we'll get there. But I even got my favorite Cinnamon environment since I use Linux Mint all the time. In fact, it's right over here, running production. Yeah, this broke immediately. This always breaks. Like, I installed GNOME Manjaro about a year ago. It didn't boot after install. I'll leave it at that. This XFCE one, as soon as I tried to install Hyprland, spaghettified the system. Broke immediately. I even used the minimal version of XFCE. Doesn't matter. It's broken. Plasma is Plasma. It's always half broken sometimes. We'll see when Plasma 6 is a thing, if that's still the case, but Plasma causes a lot of problems that it really shouldn't. That's one of the reasons why I don't like plasma. Don't even get me started about Wayland on plasma. It's another dumpster fire of its own. And yeah, pretty much config files like this are how you're going to configure Sway. I'm not going to get into a lot of things, but on my system, Super D is the menu. I've got a power button in the corner that brings up a D menu power menu. I'm trying to get this to work to pull up D menu. So far, haven't had any luck. I'm probably doing something wrong, but it's what I'm currently working on. And if I do get it working, I'll have these config files out on my GitHub. Yep, and sorry, my phone or my camera died here. These camera batteries, right? I thought I had enough time, but I'll get it on charge. The ramblings of an idiot. I guess if you guys like the video, like it, subscribe, turn on notifications, all that fun jazz, and I'll catch you another time, hopefully with a little bit less negativity to the video. Cheers.